and welcome to Attwood Unleashed number 32. It is Wednesday evening when we go to the more cerebral themes on YouTube. All that blood and guts and gore of true crime and gangsters and cops and prison guards. We have a temporary respite on our Wednesday evenings. And Ash has sent me over the rundown of all of our phenomenal guests. Let me get that downloaded real quick so I can let you know. Oops, timed out. Well, I know off the top of my head that our first guest is one of our viewer favorites, Richard Grannon. Around the time of the great deplatforming of the channel, we had a Grannon podcast go up on our backup channel. It's done really well. It's got tens of thousands of views considering the channel had no subscribers. Richard is an expert in narcissism. Yes, we all have a bit of that in us, especially media types. And he is going to be talking tonight a bit about Jordan Peterson overcoming codependency, mental health crisis, and narcissism. Richard has hundreds of thousands of followers on his YouTube channel. And I do believe the broadcast is being simultaneously broadcast on his channel too. Okay, next story is Rachel Williams, who's coming in at 6:30. She was in an abusive relationship for 18 years. Tragically, she was shot and severely injured by her violent partner in 2011, who then committed suicide, as did her 16-year-old son. Oh my goodness. But she has gone on to found the Stand Up Against Domestic Abuse organization. And she is a tireless campaigner against domestic abuse. So that is the first hour, all on YouTube. Second 2 hours, we're moving over to Patreon. We've got the award-winning writer Will Storr, and he's going to be discussing status and how that affects human behavior. Then we've got Andrew Lowney, expert on the royal family. He's written many books. He's also a literary agent, discussing his new book, Traitor and the King. Then we've got Stephen Dudley from Insight Crime, who's written a book on the MS-13 gang. So we'll be talking about the MS-13 gang and the Mexican cartels. 9:40 is a live questions and answer session on Patreon. If you want to join us on Patreon, the link is in the description box below this video. So, without any further ado, let us bring in Richard Grannon. All right. Richard.
Good evening, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Listen, I really appreciate you saying I'm a more cerebral selection. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Why can't I hear you? Saying that you're turned on. And can the viewers hear Richard Grannon? Can the viewers hear Richard Grannon? Let me know in the comments right now, please. Is it just me? All right, let me have a look real quick. What's going on here?
I don't know sign language. Sorry, Lars.
Yes, they can hear you. Oh dear. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just check my settings.
It's on you. It's on you.
Audio inputs. All right, change to...
I can't hear you now.
Hello. Try now, Richard.
I can only vaguely hear your voice. It's very loud.
Streaming on this channel, by the way. All right, so let me try one more time. Input. Audio output default. Synaptic. Hello,
I'm going to sing everybody a song. That'll lose you some subscribers.
Hello, Richard. Damn it.
Hello.
They can hear us both, but I can't hear you. Let's see. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Fare thee well
Hello,
to
hello.
Princess Landing Stage.
Right, one more thing. Hold on.
Sing
Try
along.
one more thing here. Edit.
We'll do some Irish folk
Audio
music
is
about
on.
Liverpool.
So something's wrong with my headset. Hold on a second. Apologies, people. Let me try and fix this. This is what happens when we don't do a rehearsal. The minute I don't do a rehearsal, the only time I didn't do a rehearsal, it goes crazy. Audio input. All right. Wonder if somebody else can join. Ash, are you able to join the studio, please? Just to see if you can hear me and I can hear you. If you could, perhaps if you could try, Ash. Let's see. Fan settings.
I'm just glad this isn't happening to me.
Just keep speaking, Richard, while I try all this out.
Okay. So tonight we're going to do true crime with Richard Grannon. We're going to talk Romanian gangsters, my time working for Stephen French in Liverpool, eye gouging, headbutting, snorting coke and being mental. Forget all that narcissism and psychiatry stuff. We're going to do gang warfare.
4,000. There goes that. Keep speaking, Richard, so I'll be able to hear you if I get on the right setting.
I will continue talking.
Right.
Back in the day. Yeah? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You're coming through my computer, not my headset.
Ha! Torture. This is technological torture for you, sir.
What's going on?
I just love it's not happening to me. I'm so happy that this is not happening to me.
What is going on? That's crazy.
One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Why the hell?
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This happened to me once in Prague, in a studio in Prague. It was a live I did for David Icke, and the first 10 minutes we couldn't get the audio, and I was sweating, mate. Sweating. I can't hear you at all now. Nothing. Can't hear you. Nothing. Can't hear you. Could hear you loud and clear before. It's all in the mix. Something's gone bad in the mix, kids. Can't hear a word you're saying. Let Sean know if you can hear him in the comments. I'm going to check on YouTube on my lappy. Hey, listen, we'll get through it, guys. Worst things happened in World War II. Tell you what. Let's have a look. Let's have a look what's happening. I can't hear you now, mate. Nothing. Can't hear nothing. Let's see. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh no. 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. Now I can hear myself on YouTube. What about sign language? Says SR4859. Don't know it. If I knew it, I'd sign. But you both look great, says Living Success Strategy. Listen, it's social media. That's the only thing that counts, is looking good. I've swapped sides. Sean's frozen. Grannon okay. Grannon is okay. I can hear Richard, no Sean. I can hear Richard. Grannon loud and clear. Listen, that's what counts. I'm a narcissist at heart. You all secretly suspected it. And now it's found to be true. Here, live, on the Sean Attwood Show. I'm coming out. There's always going to be this. I'm happy. You're a captive audience. As followers of Sean Attwood haven't got a clue who I am. They can't hear from Sean. Now you'll just have to listen to me. I've taken over Sean's channel. HB says, this is brill. I love it when things break down, as long as it's not my responsibility. As long as it's not my fault. But I know the torture. I know how stressful this is as well. It's horrendous. Technology is great until it lets you down, until it all goes horribly wrong. So my background was in self-defense. I did about 13 years of door work. But when I was doing nightclub security, I was also teaching self-defense. But because I had a degree in psychology and I was very into neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy, what I became known for in the self-defense community was the psychological angle on self-defense, which was training people to be emotionally and psychologically ready. I can hear you now.
5,000, 4,000.
I can hear you. You can't hear me.
Right.
That eventually evolved into training people who were really into martial arts that helped them assert their boundaries because they were struggling with it, which got me onto the whole people pleaser and narcissism codependency dynamic thing, which then evolved into what the Spartan Life Coach channel became known for. So even this channel that's talking about narcissism and codependency, it still goes back to my time doing nightclub security, which was a temporary job. I was just doing it because I didn't like working in offices. And I was going to join the army. I was going to do officer training at Sandhurst in the army. And on my last night before the RCB, which is the final 3-day test, I'd already done like little bits of officer selection and visiting the regiments. I went out in Chester, which is a famous Roman historic town. It still has the old Roman walls and a little amphitheatre there. But it's not like that big one in Gladiator. It's really small. It's like a ping pong table amphitheatre. I don't know what animals they were and gladiators they had in there.
Can you hear me?
Small space. And the night before my RCB.
Can you hear me? If you can hear me,
yeah, I can. Up. It's quiet, but I can hear you.
All right, hold on a sec.
The night before my RCB, I went for a drink. And somebody headbutted me and they hit me with a glass in the side of my eye. So then I had to delay joining the army. And whilst I was delayed and recovering from that, I ended up doing door work and that just ruined everything. Just ruined everything. I got sucked in to that terrible, terrible lifestyle with naughty, naughty people. I should have been an officer and a gentleman, but I became a cad and a bounder instead. A bounder, I say, a belly bounder. I can hear you doing a sound check off the YouTube. Andy's getting a Skype call as well. If you know Sean, can you call his phone as well just to add to the stress he's going through right now? Completely do his head in. If you live up the road from him, come and bang on the door. Just create murder. Let's just have murder. So to supplement my income, because I was quite poor doing nightclub security, that's why I started teaching self-defense on the side and making like DVDs and audios. And I'd hand burn them in my room and I'd sell them on eBay. That's how that started. And I did that for a while and it just grew and grew and grew. And I started talking about psychology more and more. People really liked it. And then some of the instructors and the soldiers and the bodyguards I was talking to, because they knew I had a background in psychology, they pulled me to one side to be like, I don't want to go to a therapist because that's a bit weird, but I want to talk to you about like emotional problems and addictions and a lot of them had quite weak boundaries. They had an inability to assert themselves, which is strange considering what their jobs were. Most of the jobs were around the assertion of boundaries. Hiya,
All
mate.
fixed. All fixed.
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. All
All
fixed.
right. I started sweating for you then. I think my codependency was coming through. I was like, fucking poor guy.
Every setting in the world was checked, and guess what it was?
What?
My headset extension lead was slightly out of place.
It's the basics, mate. It's the basics every time.
Oh, talk about
Yeah, I bet. I was doing my best, mate. I was trying to hold the fort for you as best as I could.
Oh, I'm sure you did, man. If anyone could hold the fort, it would be you.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat on.
This is the only time we didn't sound check. We just like skipped it tonight.
Got to stick to your standard operational procedures all the time.
Haven't we, La? All right, so sorry about that, viewers. I do apologize. I hope you've all had a laugh at my expense. And Richard, yeah, thank you for holding the fort there. What have we covered so far?
My history as to how I got into teaching narcissism and codependency. I said at the beginning I was going to do the true crime version of my background, with like the eye gouging and the headbutting and the cocaine and the fights in Liverpool, and just, you know, make it less cerebral. And I thought you could hear me. I thought you were going to say, no, stop. And you were just like that. Yeah, go on then.
And how is your channel going right now? Because it was doing phenomenal last time we had you on.
It's going good. It's going good. There isn't the thirst to understand narcissistic abuse and recovery from narcissistic abuse isn't going anywhere. Like, people are really, really into it. So yeah, a lot of support and a lot of gravity with the videos. Yeah, so it's going well, mate. Thank you.
So I was watching your video the other day about relationships, being in a relationship with a narcissist and love. So what is the dynamic at play there?
Well, a loving relationship with a narcissist is love that goes one way. They'll pretend to do horizontal adult to adult love, but the only thing they can stand is a vertical relationship. That's basically you worship them and they receive your adulation, and they call that equal, and they call that love. But obviously, of course, that can never be love.
So why would people stick in a relationship like that?
Like the top level explanation, the most plain explanation is that you were already conditioned for that kind of abusive, neglectful relationship from childhood, probably from childhood abuse. You probably had some holes knocked through your ego boundaries anyway, which is one level of explanation. The second level explanation, which is a little bit darker, which is that the narcissistic sort of mode of being exploits human software faults. We just don't see them coming. We just don't know what we're in until it's too late. And they sort of, even if you weren't in an abusive childhood scenario, they just enforce their reality onto you. So if you weren't a codependent before, you become a codependent through the traumatic effect of being in that relationship and not leaving.
So could you expand on how that codependency forms then?
If it was in childhood, well, whether it's childhood trauma or adult trauma, you need to be in a situation where you feel you can't leave. You need to be in a situation where you can't complain about the fact that you can't leave. You have to be put through a series of multiple double binds, and you can't say that you're in multiple double binds. That needs to be part of the double bind. You need to have your needs completely neglected, and then you need to take on the needs of another person, or at a broader societal level, the needs of a collective, and then you have to pretend that those are your needs and that you're happy about it. So there's a lot of pretense, a lot of play acting, and a lot of forcing people to do things that they don't want to do, and forcing them to pretend that they believe things that they don't really believe.
What's an example of a double bind?
Well, Gregory Bateson, who wasn't a psychiatrist, he was an anthropologist. He identified this when he was looking at behaviors in psychiatric hospitals. And he came up with Bateson's double bind theory, which was one of the double binds that he saw that we can see in any medical establishment. is things were done for the good of the patients, but they were not really for the good of the patients. They were done for the ease of the hospital employees. Things like tranquilizing people. Like, well, this is for your own good. You're psychotic, you're upset. Let's tranquilize you. It's much easier to manage and babysit a room full of people who can't talk back because they're zonked out their brains. And that the double bind would be that the family and the patients themselves couldn't say. They couldn't say, this is completely unfair. I don't need to be sedated. I'm not acting up. And so that was one example he saw of a double bind. You weren't allowed to say that you were in this double bind. So whatever you said, you'd end up getting sedated.
So how has lockdown exacerbated these codependent people who are in relationships with narcissists?
Well, I mean, if you're for any and all contact with a narcissist is an opportunity to abuse, to erode your boundaries, and to put their worldview into your head. So if you're in under house arrest and it's illegal to physically leave your house or to go to work, it'll exacerbate it because you're just in more contact with that person. I think that's the easiest way of describing it.
And can this evolve into domestic abuse?
Very easily. I mean, it's people complain to me all the time about the incompetence of the authorities. When I left university, I worked for the Crown Prosecution Service first, for the probation services. And I have to say, they are incompetent, they are lazy, it is useless. Yes, that's all true. But on the other side, I would say, well, what do you expect them to do? Because everything that we want them to do to protect people from emotional abuse, if you look at it from their perspective, it becomes an infringement of yours or other people's civil liberties, ultimately. So we say, oh, they should recognize emotional abuse the same way they recognize physical abuse. And I always think, how? That's fine. I agree in principle. But unless we're psychic and we have like helmets we can wear that let us know exactly what's happened at a psychic level, how can I know to a nicety and a nuance that you're really the victim of an invisible form of abuse called emotional abuse? How do I know you're not gaming the system, playing the system, taking revenge on somebody, smearing their name, damaging their reputation? It's a nightmare. But emotional abuse is absolutely a form of domestic abuse. It's very hard for the services and the authorities to help. Very hard.
So are these narcissists quite high IQ then to trick people into codependency?
They can be, but there are also low IQ narcissists. They're not particularly bright. It's not hard to trick people into codependency when we live in a culture that actively fosters codependent ways of being in the world. It actively fosters infantilism, being emotionally immature, being having a dreamy, hyper sentimentalized view of love and attachment and living with somebody. It's not hard to hook someone in. We all pretend it's hard and that they're super high IQ, they're all Hannibal Lecter, they're playing 3D chess, whatever. No, you're just lonely. You're lonely. You want to be with someone. It's a lonely culture that we live in now. We're all atomized. We don't have the support of family, friends, and church the way we used to. And so it's quite easy. People are easy marks nowadays. I include myself in that.
So you're saying technology has groomed us for the tricks of the narcissist?
In many ways, yes. I mean, in many ways, the thing with narcissism, the fascinating thing with narcissism, it's not like psychopathy. A psychopath can put a gun to your head and say, do as I say or else. A narcissist is, they're like the vampires of old mythology. Some of the myths would say a vampire can't bite you unless you invite them in. They have to seduce you with words. They have to promise you something. So there's an element of consent with narcissism. And part of that is through appealing to people's latent narcissism. They appeal to our vanity. They appeal to our entitlement, the latent narcissism we already have. We live in a particular cultural milieu with the social media usage where narcissism is elevated. Codependent modes of attaching are elevated. So yeah, it has made us easier targets, I think.
Just want to give a shout out to Chet Sandu in the chat on Facebook there. I spent the last 2 days filming with him. Massive podcast coming out with G Rilla and his family out of Birmingham, and Chet Sandu part 5 as well. So, Richard, Who are the highest profile narcissists in the world right now in terms of famous people?
God, I mean, I think we discussed them on your show before when we were talking about high profile cases of paedophilia.
Let's
The high
stay away
profile.
from that
Oh,
that
okay.
case.
That subject we
We
won't talk
can
about
go
that
towards the
subject.
royal family members if there's any of those.
Okay. But not the paedophile ones.
Yes.
Yeah, you have people in positions of power, and I think it's always interesting to look and see who goes for that power and why. There are elements of, like, narcissism is typically comorbid. They'll either be comorbid with borderline, or they'll have schizoid tendencies or psychopathic tendencies. It's perfectly normal for narcissistic personality disorder to be comorbid with other personality disorders. So when you're looking at narcissistic psychopathy, look to your politicians. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on, whether they represent left or right. Why do they want to be in power? So that they have power over other people, so that they are important, so that they can inflict their view of the world and the way people should act on others, which, when you think about it, is a monstrous display of arrogance. Like, I know how you should live, and now I'm going to enforce it in law. My God, I don't even know what socks to put on in the morning. I don't know how to tell. How can I have the arrogance to tell people everybody needs to live like this? This is the way. So when you're looking at any power structure, you'll see narcissists and psychopaths up there for sure.
So one of the most watched shows of all time in the past year was the Oprah Winfrey interview of the royals.
Mm.
What narcissistic factors were at play there?
Oh, I think we've got a classic narcissistic female with their claws and fangs deep into a highly codependent male. I mean, it's a narcissist codependent dynamic straight out of a textbook. She really is pulling that lad's strings, and she's using his latent narcissism against him, and his mother wound and his latent mummy issues against him, to get exactly to not force him, but to move him to do what she wants him to do.
Do you think the bizarre way royal family members are raised made him more susceptible to the claws of a narcissist?
100%. I mean, we're talking about atomization, loneliness, and codependency. What could be more codependent than telling a child you're a servant of the nation for life? This is what you're born into. There's a whole nation of people who are looking to you to serve as a figurehead. You don't consent to that. You don't sign up to it. You will have people going through your private stuff for life, and that's it. You're born into it by blood. Of course, you will resent it, but at the same time as resenting it, you'll become addicted to the perks of it, and it becomes. I think that they're a classic example of that sort of push pull, where they want the benefits, but they want all of the rights and none of the responsibilities, and they're struggling with that, obviously, because the establishment itself is pushing back and saying, no, you're not doing that. You need to be on one side of the fence or the other, which to me is fair enough. I think what the establishment is doing with them is right. They should be forced to make a choice.
So when Meghan said that she hasn't Googled the royal family and acted as if she had no prior knowledge of them, what is your interpretation of that psychologically?
I think that she's astonishingly similar to Princess Diana in that regard. She made similar claims that she wasn't interested in the royals. She didn't know anything about them. She was a doe-eyed, naive young girl who went in with no interest and no. It's utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. I don't believe a word of it. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. She's been very strategic. She's been very, very careful at every pass on the chessboard, including what she's doing now. This would have been planned years in advance.
So you're saying that when she said something like that, that's obviously dubious, therefore the very opposite is probably the truth. She researched the hell out of the royals and had a game plan.
I think so. Actions speak louder than words. Where they are now is where she wants them to be, probably. Victimized, outcast, ostracized, all of this stuff. I mean, it was the same with Diane, who complained that she wasn't receiving the mental health help from the royal family that she wanted. I'm not a royalist, but I'm a realist. Why would you expect a royal family to help you with your mental health in 1970s and 1980s Britain? I mean, that is insane. Of course they're not going to help you with that. That's not what they do. That's not the culture that they represent. That's not their background. So it would be like me hanging around with a bunch of coke using gangsters, going on a night out with them and then going, oh, you wouldn't believe what they did. They were snorting cocaine and drinking and going to strip joints. Heavens above, let me clutch my pearls. What did you think they were going to do? You knew perfectly well what they were going to do. I think it's almost infantile in how clunky the strategy is. It's so obvious what she's doing. It's so obvious that what she's saying is a lie. And when she's not lying, she's being completely disingenuous.
So when those dynamics are at play in a relationship such as Harry and Meghan, do those relationships sustain or do they crash and burn?
This is my hypothesis. It's not based on any research that I'm aware of. I think it's more sustainable for a narcissistic psychopath to be with another narcissistic psychopath. So he either must turn into a malignant narcissist to survive being with her, or he will eventually become exhausted. We in the narcissism community think the classic is narcissist with codependent, but that's our solipsism. That's our projection. I think the majority of sustainable narcissistic relationships are narcissist with borderline, narcissist with psychopath, narcissist with histrionic, or narcissist with narcissist, because then they can take turns to drink each other's milkshake and use each other for narcissistic supply as the years go on. The codependent will get exhausted at some point and collapse.
So when you've got two narcissists feeding off each other like that, then is the total narcissism the sum of the parts, or is the narcissism enhanced by this combination factor?
It's a really good question. And again, I'm really pontificating based on the few cases that I know of. They can sort of make each other successful and motivate each other in their narcissistic endeavor. So you look at like a film like Natural Born Killers, a sort of a Bonnie and Clyde. If they're criminally inclined, can they become super criminals, more criminal, and encourage each other? Yes. Where does it end? In death. Like if it's criminals and they're psychopaths, they usually get killed because they escalate the chaos. If it was white collar crime or something that was under the covers, I don't see why they couldn't make each other more effective over time and become greater than the sum of their parts. Sure.
What does Jordan Peterson say about overcoming codependency and narcissism?
What he says is, clean up your damn room, bucko, which is the essence of his cure for the rampant codependent narcissism that we see in society at large. But his focus is more on social justice warrior culture, and particularly where that's infiltrated the universities, because that's his background, that's his environment, and where people are enjoying the festival of fix, going outward. How do we save the world? We're virtuous saints. Look how cool we are. Look how good we are. We're going to fix everything, or we're going to tear down the bad things. He's actually pointing out how facile, superficial, and narcissistic and codependent that behavior is. The harder task, and he draws from Nietzsche and Dostoevsky philosophically, and Jung philosophically, is to individuate, to become an individual, and to grow up. Much, much harder, much more frightening, and requires much more sacrifice.
How virtuous are these virtue signalers? Are they closet psychopaths?
Some of them 100% are closet psychopaths. If you are signaling, by definition, because it's a term from biology, you're being deceptive. A signal has the notion of deception built into it, because it's something animals do with each other. They will show each other that they're ready to breed when they're not. They'll say that they're strong mates when they're not. Sometimes they give true signals, but often they give deceptive signals as well, because they want to propagate their own genes. So you will see psychopathy. My personal opinion is the particular type of narcissism will be more at that end of the spectrum where it crosses over into borderline. So you have people who are full of guilt, full of shame, very, very weak boundaries. They can't control their own emotions. They project their warped, emotionally dysregulated perceptions out into the world. And they think, if I can just save the world, if I can just fix this, then I personally will feel better. Of course they won't. It never works.
So Friedrich Nietzsche's love life was a disaster. What do you think he would make of the modern dating scene and all the narcissists running around?
He would say, "Amor fati, love your fate, love what it is." I'm sure he'd have a good laugh. I mean, at the very least, if we brought Nietzsche back, he could say, "Well, I predicted this. I told you that this was the path that we were on." Back in 1883. 1883 was when Dostoevsky wrote about it in The Brothers Karamazov. 1888, Nietzsche wrote about it in The Gay Science. And he would have said, "I told you so. I warned you this was coming." Because if you don't have a higher order vision of what life is, and you topple that, religion, God, whatever, values, philosophy, you topple that, what goes into its place? Narcissism. He predicted this, like word for word. He said, we will take the place of God to justify our guilt for having thrown God to one side.
So you talked about technology grooming people for narcissists. The modern dating scene also is a function of technology. And what would you tell people are the warning signs then to prevent these narcissists from getting their claws in and hooking onto codependence or creating codependency?
I don't think it's really that hard to see narcissism. There's tons of videos online and articles saying these are the red flags to watch out for. I would say it's probably more important that people just grow up and become their own person. Stop trying to fix the problems in your life by hooking onto a partner. It's not your mom, it's not your dad. Childhood's over. It's on you. And if you try to do that, the more you try to do that, the more you incite narcissistic abuse in the other person, because you're connecting to them in a sick way. In the dating scene, most people who are dating are still traumatized from their last 5 relationships, and they're trying to use another human being narcissistically to feel better. And then they get narcissistically abused and they're like, boo-hoo, I tried to use somebody and they used me. Well, that wasn't very nice of you, was it? So when you touch a hot stove, your fingers get burnt then. Yeah. I have very little sympathy for people in the modern dating scene, because I think it's monstrous. I think the way people treat each other now is beyond savagery.
Got a couple of minutes left. We've got a question coming from Scott on YouTube. Thank you, Scott. Do narcissists recognize their own narcissism?
They can do, and they can be quite proud of it. That's according to the published research. That you can say to somebody with narcissism, "Here are the traits of narcissism. Does this sound like you?" And they can say, "Yes, that sounds like me. How do you feel about that?" Pretty good. They see it as almost like they see themselves like an evolutionary step up. They have the advantage in this competition of life that they're living.
Are you predicting a mental health crisis post-lockdown?
We were in a mental health crisis before all of this happened, and the mental health crisis is at absolute breaking point. I mean, if you have a serious mental health problem in the United Kingdom now, it's highly likely that you will, and you go through the National Health Service, you'll probably get 1 or 2 cursory phone calls by a hastily trained somebody in their 20s, and then you'll be told to go and interact with a computer program for therapy.
So would you want to tell everybody where they can find you, Richard? I know that this is going out on your channel as well. And I'm going to put all your links in the description box below the video.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The best place to find me at the moment, I'm most active on my Instagram, which is at richard.grannon on Instagram.
Huge thank you for coming on this evening and carrying the show as I fumbled around. I'll promptly get on my video editor once this live stream finishes after 9, so the trolls can't get their hands on that footage. Oh, just gave them the heads up. There'll be all kinds of videos created off that now.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Okay. Thanks, Richard, anyway. I will
No problem,
hope to see you again soon, my friend.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, man. All right, bye-bye. What a great guy. And yeah, thanks for the questions, guys. I'm watching all the chat right now. Thank you to everybody watching this, wherever you are, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. It is going out absolutely all over the place. And we are about to bring our next guest in. Due to my sound malfunction, We are running 10 minutes behind on this evening's show, but we are about to bring in Rachel Williams, and I've watched some of her stuff already. It is harrowing. She is on a mission, and the reason for going over this stuff, again, as a disclaimer, this is an interview with an activist. It's educational content, and if you do not have a strong stomach, then I urge you to go and watch something else, because this woman has gone through absolute hell. Hello, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness, why can I not hear you? Hold on a second. It's not happening again, is it? Ooh. I've got my sound on. Is your sound on? Have a check. Because your sound bar's not lighting up at all. So if there was sound coming in. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on now.
I'll take the headphones off.
I'm having flashbacks. All right, that's much better. Uh-oh. Have you gone again?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, you're there. You're there. All right, Rachel. Huge thank you for coming on. I've watched, some of the other stuff that you've done. Do you just want to tell the viewers a little bit about you?
Yeah, so my name's Rachel, and as you rightly said, I would class myself as an activist, a campaigner. I do a lot in the domestic abuse arena because of my own lived experience by living with a psychopath for 18 years. And it was quite interesting listening to your last speaker using the word psychopath. I was with a guy for 18 years. His name was Darren. Didn't realise he was a serial perpetrator of abuse. And when we get into these relationships with abusive people, we don't, think that they're abusive, because it's a grooming process. They groom us. And it was probably within the first couple of months, I seen something that I thought, that's not too good. But as we know, they charm us and get us back to where they want to get us to. And fast forward 18 years of crap, basically, being spat on, slide punches to the back of the head, being strangled.
Can I just slow you down one little bit, Rachel? Could you just tell us how you met Darren?
Yeah, so I met him over his sister's house, who was a neighbour of mine. And he happened to be there one day, and very charming, a real good laugh. He had a good sense of humour, which I like. And yeah, we just sort of hit it off. And I was a single mum. I had a little boy, Josh, who was 2, and I was 21 at the time.
How long did it take before you guys moved in together, or he moved in with you?
It was probably within about a 12-month.
Okay, so he moves in within the first year. Was he charming for that first year? Were there any little warning signs?
They were looking back now, and I think once you're out of it and you look back, your vision is certainly, you've got more clarity and you can see things better than you did when you were in it. There were warning signs, but obviously, being quite young and naive, sort of poo-pooed them. But the most significant moment for me was when I was 6 months pregnant, carrying his child, and he lifted me off the floor by my throat, and he let me go when my lips turned blue, and that was his words that he later told me.
Oh my goodness. So when that happened, then what was going through your brain, as it's happening, and then in the aftermath?
So I was just so shocked by his actions, and then I can remember it so vividly. He fell on the floor and cried like a baby, fell on his knees. He had quite a bad upbringing. He was brought up in an extremely violent household himself. His brother had committed suicide 4 years prior to that. And he just said that he was sorry. He was mixed up. He didn't know what he was doing. And bear in mind, he was 6'7", and at the time he was 18 stone. He had probably about a 60-inch chest. He was a bodybuilder, and to see somebody of that stature, you know, crying and pleading and saying it'll never happen again, I just believed him.
So you were reunited with him after the incident. What incident came next?
I can remember I can't remember because there was so many, but the most vivid ones was even like just after I gave birth to our son, you know, he had a go at me. He was constantly having a go at me. You know, I was going to be a shit mother, stuff like that. And he was just basically just a horrible person. But it's really weird because one day they're nice and one day they're horrible. So you're just so confused because you're in this fog, and the person who's abusing you is also the person who is comforting you. So it is really like just a screw up of your head. But there was so many incidents, you know, trying to capture everything in the book I wrote. I just can't do it. And there were certain things that I even forgot. For instance, I was a hairdresser and I couldn't cut a man's hair. But my old employer wrote a letter and I totally forgot about this. And he used to make regular surprise visits to the salon to check my appointment column, to check that there was no guys booked in to have their haircut. And because that was my normal relationship, I totally forgot about that, because that was the things then that was at the bottom. It was a lower scale thing, but the coercive controlling behavior was through the roof.
Did his jealousy increase over time?
His control did. His jealousy, I think, was probably the same, but his control obviously ramped up. And as we know, when you're threatening to leave, which I did on several occasions, you know, that gets ramped up even more. Then, you know, the Mr. Persuader comes into game then, persuading you to come back, and either that's with promises to change, threats of suicide, or threats to kill you. So, you know, so it's all part of the mix.
What was the attitude of your parents and his parents as things got rocky?
Nobody knew much about it. And that's what you find with victims of domestic abuse and violence and coercive controlling behaviour, because you function. And people sometimes think the victims and survivors of abuse must be weak. Absolute bullshit. They're not weak. You know, every day they're safety planning, they're managing, they're trying to pacify their perpetrators, they're holding jobs down, they're running a household, they're looking after kids. So I tried to contain it as best I could. And I did that because Darren was very well known to the police. He was the local hired gunman. For instance, we'd have somebody knock on the door offering him £1,000 to go in court that afternoon to intimidate a witness. The police were scared of him. I had police come to the house no end of times, and I can remember one particular incident. The police officer knocked the door, and I was told to go and answer the door. And as I opened the front door, the copper said, "You know, is Darren there?" And Darren was actually looking at this police officer, and it was plainclothes CID. And he said, "What do you effing want?" And he said, "Oh, can we come in?" And with that, Darren jumped up. And like I said, he was a big guy. When I finally did leave him, he was 22 stone, pumped with steroids, 60-inch chest, a nutter as well. And with that, Darren leapt up to the front door. And the copper said, "You know, we want you to come down the station. We need to question you about something." And he said, "I ain't coming." And as he pushed the door, the police officer put his foot in the door. And Darren said to him, "Get your effing foot out of my door, or I'll bury you in that bank." And the police officer dragged his foot out. And at that point then I thought, I'm in this on my own.
Wow. Surely your mum sensed something over those 18 years.
My mother never liked him, and she could see certain things. She could see that I never used to go out socialising with friends. She would say, "You know, you're going on a Christmas do," and I'd make excuses, and I would say things, and I would repeat what he would say. You know, town is for when you're single. You don't unless you're looking for the shelves. And this was all Darren's words, which I took on board, because you just make the excuses why you're not going out, you know, and you almost take on their belief system then. And that is exactly what I did.
Did he, you know, get physical and leave any marks on you?
Yeah, I used to have hair, you know, hair pulled out. He never physically punched me in the face because he would have annihilated me. I mean, I've seen him, you know, he was a doorman. I've seen him, you know, absolutely obliterate men. He broke one guy's cheekbone. He had to have a plate in his face. But he used to be very rough with me. He used to squeeze my face. He used to ram his head into my head. He would throw things at me, smash things in the house. You know, all that what you get from perpetrator behavior.
Did you ever plan in your mind strategies to escape?
A couple of times I thought, you know, I've got to go. But he used to write in cards, you know, we're going to be together in this life and the next. And I'm going to take my last breath saving you. I'll give all my blood to save you. Real dark, sinister cards. So I knew that, you know, when I did eventually go, then I was going to have to do something quite drastic. And I can remember going on holiday with friends of ours, myself and Darren. And again, he kicked off because he wouldn't care who he kicked off in front of. It could be the Queen, the Pope, the Prime Minister. If he wanted to kick off, he'd kick off because he thought he was untouchable. And he kicked off on holiday, and I thought to myself, then I was 39 at the time, and I said to myself, do I really want to be 49 years of age, having my hair pulled out, being spat on, having sand chucked in your face because you've looked at him the wrong way? And I just thought, that's it, I can't take anymore. So in my head, I was sort of planning when we got back home, you know, how am I going to get out of this? Because I had left him before, and he coerced me to go in back. Threatening to kill himself, and he'd strangled me on the 9th of July in 2011, and that was over an argument. And I can remember standing by the back door looking out, and the tears were streaming down my face. And with that, then he came behind me and he said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to leave. And that was when I walked into the living room, and he strangled me ferociously. Both of my boys were in bed. This was about 7:15 in the morning. They both said that they thought they could hear a pig squealing downstairs. Obviously, that was the noise I was making where he was strangling me. My oldest boy was doing a 999 silent call. My youngest son, Jack, had a baseball bat. And at that point, then Darren let me go and started crying. Typical perpetrator behavior. Plays the victim. You've got to take care of him because Dim. And then, yeah, so, and I was like, you know, that's it. And both my boys went back to bed because, you know, this was the worst thing they'd seen, but this was an unusual behavior in the household. And then Darren started pulling me up the stairs by my hands. And I just knew what he was going to do. And Darren kept an arsenal of weapons. He'd already done prison. He'd already been done for a 2.2 pistol, a humane bolt killer, CS gas, stun guns, flick knives. His bedtime reading was Donnie Brasco, Al Capone, you name it. He took me to Chingford Mount Cemetery to go to put flowers on the Crays' graves. Darren lived in this fantasy world. So he pulled me up the stairs, and he was opening the top drawer, and I knew exactly what he was going to do, and he was going to cut his wrist. This was really where he's really ramping up now. The victim, he's playing the victim. How could I leave him? And Jack came out of the bedroom and said, Mum, what's going on? And I said, go on, cut your wrists in front of your 16-year-old son, thinking that I was going to shame him, and he put the knife back. Well, by the time I got down to the bottom of the stairs, he'd already slit his wrist. And at that point, I thought, shit, if he can do this in front of his son, you know, what else is this guy capable of doing? And the fear then of staying with him became greater than the fear of leaving him. And at that point, my mind was made up. I've got to get out of this. And that's when I started the ball rolling.
And he detected that, did he?
He knew that I'd gone into the solicitors. I gave a statement, which is the absolute ultimate when you're living with a perpetrator of abuse. I gave an 18-page historical statement to the police. I'd gone and stayed with a friend as well at the time. He was arrested for the strangulation, which he was charged common assault. Which, you know, common assault could be a spit in the face. So that really was like great. So over a 6-week period then I'd gone in, filed for divorce. He wouldn't sign the divorce papers. He was constantly texting me, phoning me. He was sat outside my place of work, stalking me. I didn't realise he was stalking me, but it was really bad stalking. It wasn't picked up by the police as stalking behaviour. And then he knew then that I wasn't coming back, and I'd gone out on a night out and met somebody on a night out, which I do share in my book. And he had found out about that, and absolutely that is when he decided what he was going to do next.
So what did he do next?
So I'd gone to work on the 19th of August 2011, covering a colleague's day off. And I had a really anxious feeling most of the morning. And I can remember my boss saying to me, you know, Rachel, is everything all right? And my words to her was, I'm just trying to get rid of Raoul Moat. And the day before, my mum had written a letter to the police and said, if you let him go, you are signing her death certificate. And that the night before this incident happened, I'd gone from my mum's house and actually moved back into the marital home because Darren was on bail restrictions and he had to stay at his family members. So I'd gone to work and I had this lump in my throat. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't drink anything, with the anxiousness of just knowing that something was going to happen. And it was about 2:20 in the afternoon, and I just finished blow drying a lady's hair, and she was paying, and I was giving her a change back. And at that point, then the shop went really sort of dark where the door was. So I looked to the door to see what was blocking out the sun, thinking it was some truck or something. And with that, Darren filled the door frame and he was pushing the door open. And as I looked, I could see him reaching into a bag. And all I can remember seeing, he was doing this and he was pulling out a sawn-off shotgun. I don't know why I done it. Whether I must have thought to myself, if he comes in here, what am I going to do? Subconsciously, because there was nowhere to run. And I just ran towards him, started fighting with him for the gun. Not that I was much of a match, because obviously the size of him. I can remember him hitting me with the butt of the gun and myself falling on the floor. At that point then, I can remember there was an old lady on the shop floor, Connie. She was 92 or 93 at the time. I can remember the phone being on the floor as well, and the receiver being off, and trying to press the receiver to get a line and to do 999. And he just stood over me, and thankfully I had the presence of mind to pull my knees up under my chin into a fetal position, and he just pointed the gun to my chest, and he actually told me he loved me and pulled the first trigger, which my left leg took. The second shot just flew past the side of my head. And then I can remember just looking on the floor, and he put the gun down, and I do believe it was to reload. And it was a silver ornate gun, looked like something from the bloody 1900s, but you know, it had all this ornate engraving on it. I can remember grabbing the gun, and I had some sort of supernatural strength because he could not retrieve the gun from me. And I know there was a hefty battle in the shop for the gun because I had a watch on that day, and the face of the watch was scratched in every direction where we were doing this with the gun. The next thing then, I felt him boot me under the chin. He stamped all over my head. I had his boot mark embedded in my arm. I had 4 of his fingers as if he'd had fingerprints put into my back. They was bruises. And then he absolutely just battered the shit out of me. There's no other way, he just battered the shit out of me. And then he'd gone. And I can remember then the police coming in and feeling really drained and just wanting to sleep. And obviously it's the come down from that adrenaline. And he'd gone. And then obviously I was taken to hospital then. And then the police were all in the hospital. Everybody was out looking for him. There was helicopters out because they didn't know where he was. And about 7 o'clock at night, I think it was, I can remember a police officer coming in to tell me that they'd found him and he was hanging from a tree in the woods. And I cannot tell you the relief. I didn't give a shit what happened to my leg. They wanted to take my leg off because of all the damage. I had no shin left. You know, what a sawn-off shotgun does to a point-blank range is horrendous. All they salvaged was my kneecap, and I can remember the surgeon telling me in Swansea that they'd been Swansea then, before they really properly operated. They ordered parts from America. They researched how to build the leg back, and that was after the IRA used to blow the back of the kneecaps out. So they got all this like medical information to save my leg, and they did manage to save my leg, thankfully.
Oh my God, I'm like, I don't know what to say next. That story is just, all I can do, I guess, is just salute you for your bravery to go through that, to fight back, to wrestle with this giant, strong, psychopathic guy who was trying to kill you and stomping on your head. Oh my God, I can't imagine.
But that wasn't so, Sean, as you probably read the next bit of my story. You know, that was great that Darren had killed himself. And I did endure, and I still do endure, a lot of crap from the exes, and they're known in the domestic abuse world as flying monkeys, and people who know about domestic abuse will know that terminology. But I came out of hospital on Friday, the 23rd of September 2011, and my son committed suicide on the 26th, 4 days later. Yeah, and that was because of one man's actions. Jack was 16 and he took his own life as well.
Jesus Christ.
And that's why I do what I do.
You must have had a period of shock and trauma then following all this before you turned the corner and came out and decided to do what you do. What inner strength did you draw on just to pull yourself out of that?
I can remember having my IPCC report and my serious case review couriered to my house the following year in the summer of 2012. And I can remember reading it and just seeing the blunders after blunders after blunders in these reports. You know, I was failed miserably. Jack was failed miserably. I'd already phoned social services to say that Jack had changed. Whilst I was in hospital, he'd become a boy I no longer recognised. Nothing was done. Even Darren was failed to a certain degree. He should have been sectioned in Broadmoor. The man was crackers. And I can remember looking at this and thinking, no other family is going to go through this if I got anything to do with it. And at that point then, I just thought, you know, I didn't have any counselling. I didn't have any therapy, because my feelings were, unless you can sit somebody next to me who'd had 18 years of shit, who'd had an attempted murder and who'd lost a son through suicide, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I have got a strong Christian faith as well. And I think that's where my strength comes from. But for me, it was like, you know, I'm going to do everything I can. And that's what I've done in the last 7 years. I've really sort of took the bull by the horns and just thought, you know, there's so much that needs changing in the domestic abuse world. You know, I've got either 5 or 6 petitions running at the moment with nearly 1 million signatures on. My latest one is around gun licensing law after the Plymouth shootings. You would not believe how many perpetrators convicted and those with a history have got firearms, and you can head over to the website and sign the petitions if anybody wants to sign the petitions. I speak to the police, I deliver training. You wouldn't believe how many people don't understand about domestic abuse and violence. And one of the slides I use for people who don't really understand, and I think they might have some element of understanding of what a perpetrator of abuse is and what coercive control is. But I read out this slide and I say, you probably would say that somebody who uses violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, somebody who's controlling with coercive behaviour to control others' behaviour, the use of fear for submission, threats both verbally and abusive to cause destruction and mayhem, and somebody who inflicts fear, pain and chaos is a perpetrator of abuse. But actually, those were the words that Barack Obama used when he was the president of the USA following the French terror attacks. We need to start calling these perpetrators domestic terrorists, because I tell you now, that is what it is like existing in that household with somebody who's perpetrating abuse, because you're constantly walking on eggshells. You don't know when the next attack is coming. You're in fear constantly all the time, planning how to befriend them, how to pacify them. And I think society really needs to start using those words, domestic terrorists.
My head is spinning with what you just told me, Rachel, and it's just nothing but love and support in the comments on all the platforms right now. People are asking how they can support you and stuff. And one of the things we've been campaigning on this channel is that the police, it seems, a lot of good people have joined the police to try and go after the bad guys, like what you've described with Darren. Yet they get assigned to, shaking kids down for weed and stuff like that, and filling the private prisons. It all seems really upside down. I want to hear stories like yours. And we had a woman I'll call Maya, who her own dad did wicked things to her. And this guy didn't kill himself or anything like in Darren's case, but he knew when he was arrested that he would only get so many years, and he wrote a letter to the judge laughing at the whole system. It seems to me that the police resources are being used for revenue generation, filling private prisons, when protecting women and kids. I mean, what kind of society doesn't put protecting women and kids at the top of its criminal agenda?
Sadly, ours, Sean. Sadly, ours. I mean, 2019, 92% of the defendants in domestic abuse cases were men. And I was dragged by a judge only this year to crime court, almost for contempt of court for having an opinion on a domestic homicide, which was quite local to me, where the guy, Anthony Williams, said he snapped during 5 days into lockdown over money. He had over £100,000 in his bank. He started he started strangling Ruth, his wife, at the top of the stairs, and he said he snapped, but yet he managed to chase her down the stairs and snap her neck at the bottom. He got 5 years. So he gets to keep the house and he gets to keep his money in the bank. And that judge told me there was no domestic abuse. They went everywhere together. The only time they argued was when she called him lazy. Absolute red flags all over the case. He'll be out after Christmas.
This absolutely pisses me off. What kind of system just releases these monsters to harm women and kids? Honestly, it's so frustrating to hear this over and over again from so many people. Since on this channel we've been interviewing survivors of things. It's happening all over the country right now.
We need men to stand up and to call other men out who are using sexist language, jokes, and to say, if you hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, my missus, if you don't do that, she can look out," or whatever, just call them out. And one of my patrons on my community interest company is Michael Sheen, and he gave an absolute fantastic 8-minute of speech about how this is a man's issue, and men need to do more, and that's on my website to watch, and that is so powerful.
And people like you raising awareness of it, coming on these platforms is doing a massive amount as well, because people see that you've been through it, and then it makes them think twice versus just hearing it from somebody else. How are your other children doing now, and the rest of your family, your parents? Is everything okay?
Yeah, so obviously I lost Jack. He was 16. He would be 26 now. And then my oldest son, Josh, he's 31 just after Christmas, and he was still living home till he was 29. So either I was doing something right or something wrong for him to still be home. But he's fine. Yeah, he's pretty much like me, and obviously he wasn't Darren's son, which is great. So there's no connection with the flying monkeys. But yeah, he's pretty much like me. We can't turn the clock back. We gotta. Jack wasn't in his right mind, but he chose to do what he done, and I think for me, that sits better than for his life being taken. Obviously, it was a choice that he made. Like I said, he wasn't in his right mind. But, I got a friend, Claire Throssell, whose perpetrator killed both of her boys, set fire to the attic, took them up there to look at the train set, and set fire up there and kill both her boys. And I just, my situation's bad, but then I look at Claire and I think there's always somebody worse off, and her story is horrific.
So we've just got 1 minute left. Can you tell the viewers we're going to put all your links in the description box below this video. Can you tell the viewers where they can go and contact you and support you and sign any petitions?
Yeah, so if you head over to www.sutda, so standuptodomesticabuse.org, and there's a load of information on there. There's all my petitions. I feel like I have a daily in this arena. I got fingers in all different pies. I'm just about to kick off now with a national dentistry register for victims and survivors of abuse who have had their teeth kicked in. So that is coming soon. But you'll see me around. I've not always got something to shout about. I'm challenging government. says it as it is. Bit of a liability for some, but hey ho, if you don't say it, you don't get done.
Where are you based, Rachel?
In South Wales, Monmouthshire.
All right, yeah, would love to do something else with you. Maybe, have a longer interview in a studio, something like that, if you're up for it.
Yeah, I'm always up for talking about domestic abuse and what else we can do.
Yeah, so I urge everybody to go down and support Rachel on her links. Huge thank you for coming on, and best of luck in everything you're doing. And if there's anything we can do for you, you just let us know, Rachel.
Yeah, I will. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the interview. Lovely. And I can see Ashley have put my book on there as well. My book is The Devil at Home, and I'm Amazon as well. You can read that.
Yeah, I will definitely check that out. Have you got an audiobook version as well?
No, and I keep trying to get hold of somebody in Penguin to get him to do an audio, but that's not up yet.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Rachel. You have a good rest of your
Cheers,
evening.
Sean. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh boy, that was a powerful story based on the actions of a monster, the horrendous behavior of a monster. I've just got it in my head now. Her leg, what happened to her leg? Almost lost her leg, wrestling this guy, high on adrenaline, fighting for her life. And then loses a son. Can you believe that? Loses a son. Bloody hell, honestly. That just hit me like boom, boom, like 2 punches to the gut. But huge much love and respect. It's what she's doing now. So brave. So brave. So please, everybody, support Rachel. And I'm definitely going to do everything I can to get her in the studio. That is such a powerful story. Honestly, I'm just knocked for six right now. I'm going to take a breather before the next section. What we've got lined up is we've got Alex Reid coming out on... when's Alex Reid coming out? Shit. The Alex Reid podcast, sorry, is coming out on Saturday at 1 p.m. We've got 3 hours with Alex Reid, 1 p.m. Celebrity martial arts, MMA fighter in UK prison. He was recently in UK prison. Then we've got on Sunday, we have got our first David Macmillan box set. So Amy's going to go have a heart attack when she hears this in a minute, the moderator. The David Macmillan box set is starting at 9:45 a.m. Sunday morning, and it's running for almost 13 hours. So all day Sunday, we've got a live stream on the channel from 9:45. David Macmillan's been going viral recently on Lad Bible, and Polly Walnuts, we're switching the Saturday premieres now to 1 p.m. on YouTube, But the David Macmillan, if you're not familiar with his story, we've got podcast 1 to 5 running back to back on Sunday, all day long with live chat on Premiere from 9:45 in the morning. Then I think the next podcast after that, many of you have watched Pure Evil Dad. We've got Pure Evil Mum. One of our Jehovah's Witnesses came back on with his friend Chris, who was raised by a Jehovah's Witness woman, Eunice. It was a big case, and oh my God, the things that Chris went to, you're going to see. You're going to hear it for yourselves. That one's coming soon as well. All right, so I need to move on now. I'm still catching my breath from speaking to Rachel. I need to move on, get over to Patreon. If you want to watch the next 2 hours, we will be live on Patreon shortly. The link is in the description box below this video. Huge thank you for all of your questions and comments and all of you guys who have put forward guest suggestions to make these streams so interesting. All right. Thanks, guys. Good night. See you soon. Don't forget Alex Reid, 1 p.m. Saturday. Cheers. Take care.